Well, here we are, live again for you on Friday nights.
And I'm live too, Craig.
I'm half alive. Friday, I feel almost alive.
Oh, I'm 100% alive.
But certainly, one of the things that does seem to be very alive in our lives are often our pets, because we've had some pretty hectic pets in our time, haven't we, Jane? And we're going to talk tonight all about pets. We're going to talk about, are they telepathic sometimes? Perhaps they sense spirit. They have healing qualities sometimes. We'll tell you about some of pets that we've had, perhaps, and we're going to have a little video in the middle as well about something vaguely related to pets. And we'd like to know all your thoughts as well.
And we're going to say some hellos.
We're going to say some hellos, and off we go.
Right. Rach, nice to see you again, Craig and Jane. Hope you're both well. We are, aren't we, Craig?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, feeling good.
Steve, hi, Craig and Jane. Hi, Steve. Jules, good evening.
Good evening.
Chaz, good evening from London. Good evening, Chaz.
So this gives us a few minutes just to let you get in, start thinking about your questions you want to ask, and say a few
Thomas,
hellos to us.
hi, Thomas.
And if you're joining us after we've gone live,
Deb,
don't forget
hello
you can still put
from
comments.
Booze. Joanne, hello, Craig and Jane. Good evening, Joanne.
So lots of you coming in, you're piling in tonight. I think this is a popular topic. So we're going to talk about pets and animals and that whole unusual psychic world of pets and animals.
Yes, it's very interesting with pets, Craig, because there's some dogs that actually can sniff out cancers in people.
Yeah, there's been a lot like that, hasn't there?
And some dogs even know someone's going to have a seizure, and that because they can pick up people's auras and they can smell when something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the perceptions are heightened.
Yeah. So a lot of what we think of about pets, and we might think of being very psychic and telepathic, is actually very high sensitivity, sensitive perceptions, isn't it? Really, you know, that like birds, for example, they might know their way home because they kind of have some homing device by knowing about the Earth's magnetic field and might see the world in a completely different way to the way we do.
In the Second World War, they used pigeons for messengers to fool the Germans.
Yeah, that was one of our main ways of getting information out of across borders at times of war. So these qualities that animals have, like homing, you know, these things are probably not anything to do with telepathy or psychic powers. They're probably just a different way of seeing the world. You know, like a bat will see the world in a very different way to the way we see it. They see it in terms of bounced sound, you know, but so that how we can't even conceive what that would be like.
Do you think animals see in colour, Craig?
And they will see in different ways and different colours and different methods the way we perceive the world. Like, you know, we have a very, fortunately, a very low sense of smell compared to most animals.
I wouldn't say that.
That's why we have to have stronger smells sometimes. And we have, you know, actually most of our senses are pretty limited compared to the animal kingdom. I mean, a squid has incredible eyesight, for example, compared to us. Or, like I said, bats have incredible hearing, or birds may have sensitivity to magnetic
and
fields.
Dolphins
like I said,
can sense when people are in trouble too. They have their own language of communicating. I can remember we had a dog called William. And I don't know how he done it, but at 3:30, he used to be waiting at the door, ready to go and greet the children, or for me to walk the children to school. Now that little dog lived till he was 19 and a half.
Yeah, he lived a long time just to spite me, actually, because he was my nemesis. He hated me. He'd pee on my leg.
I think you were jealous of him, Craig.
he was quite a character, but he had a lot of sort of empathy, didn't he, with people? He kind of knew when people were sad. He could definitely understand human emotions, and I don't see how a dog can really always understand human emotions that well. And he did seem he was great at escaping. I remember his escape committees. He'd escape out of anything.
And he had a little girlfriend. Do you remember that?
Yeah. God, that little girlfriend. I went round there chasing him, and he got broken into this house next door in the garage, and there's the two of them sat on all this bedding, and with this sort of poodle-like creature. It looked like I'd stepped into some form of French sort of parlour of some sort, you know, the house of the naughty ladies. But William, he had quite. You saw him, didn't you? You saw his spirit once, I remember.
Yes,
too,
when he passed, I remember getting up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and just go to the toilet like one does. And as I came back, went to get into bed, I happened to look down by the bed, and I saw William, and he looked so young. And I remember saying, "Craig, William's here." And the first thing was that bloody dog.
Yeah, he wouldn't go away, would he? No. But he seemed to know when people were distressed when they're coming round for readings and things. And he seemed to know when spirit was around, because when we're tuning in for spirit and particularly when we're doing mediumistic readings, he was definitely very aware of that type of thing. And this is something that's, our scientists all poo-poo it, but they poo-poo the very idea that telepathy can exist, and they poo-poo the very idea that we might be able to communicate with the spirit world.
I thought this afternoon I'd put down famous dogs and that belong to people, right? Prime Minister's dogs.
Yeah, well, we're going to do a little bit in the middle of the show, not now, on Winston Churchill and his dogs. We've got
well, I've got all the doggies' names,
so we can do a doggy name. We'll talk about that when we've seen the little video.
Okay.
But quickly, just going to quickly just chat to you a little bit about some of the experiences we've had with animals and things. There was Gizzy. Was the one. He's got the huge ears, Gizmo, right?
It's lovely.
He had
character,
real character. You know, he actually animals can. We kind of anthropomorphize them. We turn them into humans in many ways ourselves. But he definitely did seem to have. He always knew when Nanny Joan was coming. That's Jane's mum. And he used to wait by the door. And, I'd go off to Peterborough to go and get her, which is a long way from where we are near Winchester. And so it's a 6-hour drive. He'd know I was going to get Nanny Joan. And he'd sit there waiting for her. And he'd be waiting for her. And when she comes in, he used to actually stand up on his hind legs and push the door to the lounge open for her. And open the doors for her, like some waiter. This big-eared Gizmo, which he looks like Gizmo from the movie, doesn't he? But, there's a certain sort of elements sometimes to animals, isn't there, where they seem to be almost human. I mean, let's have some of your stories in a minute later.
About
have a thought about some of those.
Prawns.
He loved prawns. He was to go yum, 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 yum. I gave it to him. And it's thinking, this is like a human being. He'd go yum, yum, yum. And it sounded just like that, And so did the other two. We had Yin and Yang. They were our first two cats, really, weren't they? Who were absolute beauties.
They were Balinese.
They were Balinese cats. Now, just like we have a bond between humans, Yin and Yang were just like as inseparable as the Taoist concept of yin and yang. Unfortunately, we lost Yin. She got run over, and Yang was an absolute loss when he lost Yin, didn't he?
Cried for her, didn't he?
Cried for her, but we later on got Gizmo, who we showed a minute ago, but
an angel. But
Yang and Angel and Gizmo and Boo, of course, who you've seen on camera before, Boo, our cat that we have now, they became real buddies, didn't they, Boo and that.
No, Boo didn't like Angel.
He didn't like Angel. None of them liked Angel. But you start to watch the behaviour of the animals too. And Boo can be very, very switched on to things too, can't he? He's a bit like William the dog was.
He follows me around the garden, doesn't he? And he's got to come up in the morning on my bed when I have a cup of tea.
But I'm thinking more in terms of they know. He knows when we're coming home.
Yeah, he does.
He will know in advance when you're coming home. Now, Richard Sheldrake, Richard was his first name, Sheldrake. Anyway, the biologist that researched this idea of dogs that know when their owners are going to come home, because he did a lot of tests with them, and he found that they will start reacting and getting excited not just when they're about to come through the door, but when the decision has been made to come home. So they were logging it very carefully, and they're saying, I'm finished at work now, I'm going to come home, logging off, I'm going to head home now. The dog would react. So it's very interesting that perhaps sometimes our pets anticipate when we've made a decision to come home, which means there must be some form of telepathic connection between us and them. So, you know, have you had any telepathic connection with your pets and animals?
What about Thumper?
Thumper, he was, you see, it's not just
Rabbit.
restricted to dogs and cats, is it?
No.
But rabbits. We had loads, we're not going to show you
7.
hundreds of rabbits, but we'll show you Thumper.
Yeah.
He was our favourite. But he became very humanised
He
in
used
a
to
way.
come in the lounge and sit in front of the fire, didn't he? Lay down like a
Yeah,
cat.
he behaved exactly like a cat or a dog would. He'd come in, sit down in the lounge,
Sit next to us on the
jump up
settee.
on you and get stroked. And it was just, you know, you might have took the ears away and you got a cat, you know. And they become kind of part of, I think, they become part of the family soul, as it were.
That's right.
The little bit of the group soul. This is why sometimes people can see pets as almost like an extension of their family, and that they're like children to people. And it becomes this way, and certainly, and I think our thoughts and feelings rub off on them. I think they pick up from us, and they actually start to become a little bit humanized by being with us, in a way. And I certainly know from many of the experiences I've had when I've done mediumship for people, that many people are more interested in getting messages from the spirit world from their lost animals than they are from their human communicators, because they've considered them even more important than people they've known in life. And there's been many, many instances where we've had to give messages from the spirit world where the whole focus has been about pets and animals and giving proof of life after death.
Their relatives that would bring the dogs through. I can remember a man came all the way from Scotland, and his relative brought this lovely Doberman through, and that was his last connection with his wife, because that's a living thing for him. And he was so excited when they explained how that animal was received in the spirit realm, because that dog had trouble with its kidneys and everything, and he was so pleased that it was with his mother.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many, both of us, I know, because we've talked about them and I've written about them sometimes, some of the stories, but you know, quite often you'll give a message from the spirit world. I say, like, I've got your grandmother here, and she stood and she's standing with a horse. In fact, she's standing with 2 horses, and you suddenly get this image in your mind of a old lady standing with a couple of horses, and say, yes, she loved her horses. She had stables and the rest of it. So they kind of, the human communicator is kind of showing, I think, in some of these connections we get from spirit, that the souls of the animals also survive death just as we do, which I think is very comforting.
Well, when the Queen passed, her favourite horse, when the coffin went past, bowed its head down to Her Majesty.
Oh, did it?
Yes,
I didn't see that. Yeah,
it
I
was
could
a
imagine that was the
duffel grey
case.
horse, yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine that was the case. So, what do you think, guys? Are we just making this up? Are we just being kind of, we want to turn them into, you know, humanize these things? Or is there really a connection between us and the animal kingdom? You know, I certainly believe there is. Certainly, absolutely sure that they survive death, because there's so many messages that have come through when we've given messages from the spirit world, where an animal has come through and given proof. Usually, like Jane says, through a human communicator. So have a think. Let's start putting your thoughts about that in a moment. But before we do that, shall we just we'll do the little video in between first, shall we?
Yes.
Then we can take people's questions about it. So you like the out and abouts, some of you have been saying. So this little video clip I'm going to show you in a second is a little bit a while ago now. I think it was last year we did this one, wasn't
Churchill.
it? But we went around looking for the spirit of Winston Churchill, and he, like Hitler, loved his dogs. So I'm just going to put this little bit up and see what you think about this one, if I can get my video going without clicking on the wrong bits. There we are. today we're at Chartwell House.
That's Sir Winston Churchill to all of you.
Yes, it's his house where he sort of spent most of the war, and it said on the brochure since 1924 he was here. So this is quite interesting. I'm reading Churchill's book at the moment, one of his books, the History of the English-speaking people. So it's quite interesting to be sort of head full of all reading that, because it's 3 volumes full of all that. And I remember he spoke about Chartwell here, I think, as saying it was, he imagined sitting where we're sat here, seeing the tanks go across.
I bet you're glad
So across there, I'm going to point the camera in a second. This is where he said he saw all the tanks, he imagined the tanks going across as they invade Britain. So I guess that's where he'd imagined going across. He's probably stood at the end of the wall there, wouldn't he?
But they actually didn't go across there, did they? Because the grounds are absolutely vast.
They are pretty big. I don't know as big as some of these stately homes we've seen, but they seem to be quite big. All hills. I don't know when this was built. It's not as old as that Blenheim Palace.
Yeah. Well, I like to prefer the other house. It's built in the 14th century. It's more like an arts and crafts building.
I don't know. No, yeah. I don't think it's arts and crafts, but I will just find out.
That pavilion was built 1929.
Oh, was it?
Oh, don't you read the history?
No, I didn't read it, no.
Rather a ghastly house, I think.
And for its history, though, really. It's not so much a place to look at for its architecture. He liked his dogs, didn't he? Bulldogs, wasn't it, he liked?
Yeah.
Like John Bull.
1947, 1927.
Jock, Rufus II. So obviously Rufus was very popular. Like King Rufus.
Yeah.
So he's into history.
You have 3 dogs then?
I suppose so.
Let's go down to the studio.
You went up the hill and down again. Never mind, I don't mind a walk. What's these? The vegetable gardens, I guess. Where are you going then?
Oh, look, there's people still. Oh, look at that, Craig.
Oh yeah, that's great. Well, these are all his paintings. Actually, his work's quite good, isn't it? We went and saw Hitler's. Do you remember seeing Hitler's drawings in watercolours and etchings and things he did, didn't he? Down in Longleat House. I think he's a better painter than Hitler was. Just told me that he did 500 paintings in total that they know of. The 300 and something here, all bar that one that's in front of us there,
I think that's
of his father.
Lord Archibald. Is that his father?
Yeah, that wasn't done by him, but all the rest was in here. So I'm quite impressed by him actually. He had time to do all that.
Look at the whiskey there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'd have been. That fits in with the idea, isn't it?
Nice studio.
Painting while waiting for the message from the war room. That was quite fun. I made a joke to a woman there. I said I wanted to see the Donald Sutherland painting of him. Of course, he burnt that, didn't he? He hated it so much he had it burnt. I can understand him there. So you were saying, Joan, you think it looks like a pub?
I think this is the most ugliest house I've seen. I mean, compared to all the stately homes we've seen down Somerset, it looks like an extension of a pub. Even the frontage of it is ghastly. I mean, lovely grounds and lovely vegetable gardens, rose gardens and everything, but it's not a pretty house. It's just a historical house of who lived there.
It does look a bit like a pub, I must admit.
It does, it looks like a pub. I mean, I look at that and I think, oh, the 3 tons.
I'll let people. I'll flick the camera around. People can see what we're looking at. Well, I've got it all in there.
Awful, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. It looks like that window up there needs fixing, doesn't it, on the top right?
They've bricked it in. And look at the pipework, all that ghastly wartime green.
I think it's definitely more of a bloke's house, isn't it, really? Don't you think? There's a bloke would live there, wouldn't there? It's not really a woman's house, is it?
No.
Well, there you go. Jane slagging off Chartwell House.
It did look like a pub.
But it was a nice place.
When we sat there, somebody said, "Hello, Craig and Jane."
Oh yeah, we had some fans. We had some of you guys who met us there. Yeah, we had another one yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah.
People want to take selfies with us. I think we're getting more followers than we expect. So anyway, there it was, and I thought it was quite nice. The pet cemetery there. Not like the Pet Sematary, the movie, which was kind of a little bit spooky, I remember, with, what was his name? Like the famous,
Steven Spielberg.
No, not Steven Spielberg, the writer.
Stephen.
Oh, I've forgotten his name now. God, this is senior moment.
Stephen King.
Stephen King, yeah, that's it. So quite a lot of these stately homes do kind of have little places where they have spots for their pets, and you're going to tell us a few famous pet stories, are you, Jane?
Well, I'm just going on the Prime Ministers who own dogs. Rishi Sunak has a fox red Labrador called Nova. Boris Johnson, Dylan the dog, it's a Jack Russell cross. And you've done Churchill, and also you've got the cat Marmalade. He had a cat called Marmalade.
Yeah.
And there was a famous dog called Toto, not in The Wizard of Oz. It was a dog's actual name was Cherry, adopted by Carl Spitz, a trainer of Hollywood. So there's been quite a few dogs and that people and dogs that worked with guys and everything.
Yeah, and I think there's a strong connection. I think animals do have a very powerful effect on the way we behave
because
and
monkeys
act.
to you, don't they?
Yes, I tend to have problems with monkeys. The Miss Drew style, you mean? Yeah, but I think there is a very strong human connection with animals, definitely. And look, trainers like Barbara Woodhouse. I mean, she was a very strong spiritualist. If you remember Barbara Woodhouse, walkies. That's where that came from, didn't it? She started. She had a very powerful interest in the idea that animals do definitely continue into the next life, and wrote a lot about that, I believe, too. Certainly in Psychic News, she did some of the time, didn't she? So let's have some of your thoughts now, guys, and some of your questions, and some of your insights, and some of your stories, and anything that you like to share with us now. And Matt will put some of those up on the screen for us.
Jules, I felt my dog pass when he was with the vet passing. I can remember when we took William, because I said to William, because he was 19 and a half, and he was getting quite restless, and many a time when we got up in the night to take him out in the garden and go to the toilet, he'd fall in the pond, wouldn't he? And he was very restless, and I remember him licking my hand, and we had to take him to the vets. And when the vet actually said he's on his way out, I could feel his energy go through his body and through the crown of his head and actually pass over. Though we're very sad, we are pleased that that animal's not suffering anymore.
Yeah, and I've sat with a number of the pets. I mean, Yang, I think it was I sat with, didn't I, when the vet did it, and also Angel and and Yin and the rabbits. I mean, when it happens, you really do start to notice the difference between life and death, because like when you see a living thing, we see an auric field with it, but we see kind of an energy with it still, and that moment of death, it is almost like a switch off, just like that. There's something that changes, which is not just the fact that the body has now died, but the life has gone. You can see the life in these things, and most of us, fortunately, don't often have to sit with people as they die. But we have had many experiences, if you've had a lot of animals, because we had loads of rabbits too. I've had to watch them when their time has finally had to come and the vets had to do their job. And you definitely do get to understand that there is a very definite cut-off point between life and death. And you can see that it's not just chemical. There's something special. There's something, and there's a feeling. Just like there's a feeling in your world when a baby's born too, isn't it? There's a special feeling that life has come to us. And there's also that feeling when death comes that life has transformed into something else. It's metamorphosized into another area of existence. And yes, definitely, when those are very powerful things. And like you, Jules, we've both felt that very much. And I'm sure many of you that are watching have had to sit through those awful moments at the vets. But there's a very strong feeling that, this is life, this is death, and there is definitely a different vibration, energy, spirit. You can see when the spirit is left. Stephen King was a fantastic writer, and I loved the film Pet Sematary.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. We were talking about that, funnily enough, on the way up here, weren't we? And Pet Sematary was quite a terrifying movie. We've been enjoying the new Stephen King one that's on Channel 5 on the on the UK television at the moment, isn't it? For The Dome, or something, The Dome, isn't it? That was a Stephen King story with Stephen.
I think
Spielberg.
even that cow was
silly. It was
sliced in half, wasn't it? Creepy.
Yeah. So yes, that was Stephen King has some great imaginative ideas. How telepathic do you think they are? Says.
I think animals are very telepathic because, I mean, though they can't talk to us and they bark, they do pick up our emotions. And I'm very 100% convinced that they see people's auras and they're very knowing. The senses are heightened, definitely.
Yeah, I think they are extremely telepathic. In fact, I would possibly consider the thought, actually, that perhaps telepathy is something that comes before language, because it would make a lot of evolutionary sense from a Darwinist point of view, that it would help us to survive to have telepathy. And before the times of language, how did we get across difficult ideas? Like, there's a stampede of maddened ostriches about to attack us. How do we get that thought to others? We can show it on our faces. We can show fear. We can pick up impressions like that without language. But often we feel that energy. If you don't even claim to be a psychic or a medium or something, I'm sure most people can feel that energy when you go into a room and there's been an argument and you can cut the atmosphere with a knife. It's going beyond language. It's going right to our gut, as it were, isn't it? It's hitting us right in those deep primordial sort of parts of our mind and our consciousness, when we know that a fear can be transmitted to each other somehow. And I'm sure animals must have to do this, and they must perhaps be slightly more so than humans. Perhaps it's something we had and we lost.
Survival.
And we got the rational mind. So with the rational mind, we didn't quite need telepathy so much. And when we had language, we didn't need telepathy so much. But now, perhaps, if we sort of look deep into the depths of ourselves, we find those things, and they're a miraculous thing, a miraculous talent that we have. All of us perhaps got hidden away there somewhere. I certainly think we could all be telepathic. And yes, thanks for your question, because I think perhaps they are extremely telepathic.
The next one, then.
Much more so than we give them credit.
Chaz, sometimes my cat stares at something in space. Do you think they're seeing spirit? I believe that animals do see spirit, because sometimes you might see a dog or a cat suddenly look up to a corner, especially if someone's passed. They pick it up immediately and they're staring, but it's nothing to be frightened of. As I say, animals' senses are heightened. They've definitely got a sixth sense. And sometimes an animal, it might not like a human being, suddenly it might cower away, or a cat might crawl on its stomach away from a person. They're very knowing. Very knowing.
And certainly, like I've said before, Jane and I, when we're doing our mediumistic work, particularly if you're doing a one-to-one, face-to-face reading, so it's all done on Zoom nowadays, but when the animals in the room, they sometimes it can be quite freaky, because if William was in the room, or if one of the cats, or they'd be following around like this, and the sitter would be thinking, well, what's he looking at? What's he seeing? What's he seeing? And I'm pretty sure they see, perhaps more so than we do, when a spirit is making a communication.
One of my sitters, it was Yang actually. He didn't like the look of this woman going on his stomach, and I thought, I wonder if she was a witch in a past life.
Yeah, they don't only spot the good, and they're not only empathic, but they also spot someone they don't like. Yeah. So not everybody that comes for readings is a highly spiritual person, are they? Yeah. So I'm sure they do see spirit.
Morgan, since my pets, dogs and cats passed away, I still felt and heard them around the house. I'm sure they're sensitive to spirit, this side of life too. Yeah, I believe that animals come back, and sometimes you might feel a dog or a cat pass by your legs when you're relaxed. Or sometimes somebody's thought, I can hear a parrot, I can hear it on my shoulder and that. Because if you've got love, unconditional love, and the animal loves you, they're going to try and reach you, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I think a lot of it's to do with the fact that we get a soul connection with animals. We obviously think mainly about cats and dogs, because they're the most common and most sociable type of animals. But I'm sure the same thing happens with all sorts of breeds. Creatures, like all creatures. Horses, and if you're an elephant trainer, I'm sure. Elephants have a very powerful connection. Like Sai Baba used to have Ganesh's elephant, didn't he? That would know he was was coming. Get excited when he knew that before he saw him.
I don't like circuses. I don't like to see animals caged or circuses. I think it's cruel in a way.
Elephants have been terrible. We went
circuses.
Without realising what we were going to see, really, to one in Thailand, and were horrified by what we saw.
Poor animals.
Really, poor things. We didn't really know what we were letting ourselves in for. But that's the cruelty side of it. Animals are very, very social. I think elephants are particularly, very connected with humans as well. All the animals that we've sort of brought into our world, I'm sure, also benefit a bit with human connection, particularly if there's proper human connection where there's love. Because I'm sure that love rubs off. It's almost like a thing. It rubs off. And if you're surrounded by lots of loving people, you become a lot more loving yourself. If you're surrounded by a lot of hateful people, like we came up today and we were following a prison van that was taking people up to Winchester prison here. And I was thinking to myself, what energy is in that place now? They don't even have a window. The guys are sat in there being moved from one prison to another. And there's sort of a bad energy that you're obviously being surrounded.
How do you know it's guys? It might have been women.
Or could have been women, yeah. I think it's a male prison up there, though. I don't know. But, what you surround yourself rubs off on you. And energetically. And I'm sure pets... and animals do connect with us and send love just as we give love.
What about these dogs that are trained when people are disabled to take the washing out the washing machine, answer the door, and they do all these different jobs and everything?
That's kind of handy, isn't it? Yeah, we'll have a couple of them. Yeah.
Won't you, Craig?
Do they have one that mows the lawn, perhaps?
Or they might have one.
A lawn mowing dog, yeah.
An Irish wolfhound for the lawn.
Yeah. So let's have some of your thoughts again, guys. Yeah, can dogs tell time? That's interesting. When we were children, our dog would be waiting for us every afternoon when our bus dropped us
William
off.
used to do that, didn't he?
Well, this is one of the things that, like, Sheldrake talked to. Rupert Sheldrake talked particularly about things what he called morphic fields. Now, I don't know how I would describe that. I would describe a morphic field as a spiritual field or an auric field. But he kind of thought about them in terms of an energetic kind of field that would kind of interlink species together. So, for example, a flock of birds might be able to make these remarkable moves they make based upon the fact that they're so connected with each other that it might be that they're connecting into this idea of like a field of energy that they're all working together with, a collective aura. Maybe ants have something like a collective thought, You know, how do termites and things like that know? For example, watching something the other day where there were termites that would spot if another termite was infected with a poisonous fungi or something, and would immediately kill them and take them out the nest. How do they know those things? It's like perhaps it has a hive consciousness we talk about with bees and things. So there's this idea of morphic fields that could connect, you know, forests together, all the species of a particular forest, like the mycelium that runs underneath the underneath all the forest floor, that connects all the mushrooms together and actually connects all the trees together. So there's all this incredible interconnection that's there that we don't actually spot with our eyes, but it's there both physically, for example, like the mycelium underneath the forest floors, or also I think there's this spiritual sort of mycelium that connects nature, which Sheldrake has kind of called a morphic field. He talks about a field, and that's what, when the animal dies that we were talking about, it's like their morphic field has gone. But where's it gone? Because energy cannot be destroyed. It cannot created and destroyed. Energy is always going to be. It's gone somewhere, you know.
Right, my little mycelium.
Myceliums.
Right, what's the next question? Alexander.
Can a cat reincarnate into another baby cat of the same breed?
Very interesting question that. I wouldn't have thought so personally, but who knows? Everything's possible and everything's impossible, so one wouldn't know that.
I don't know if we could answer that question, really.
No.
But purely thinking about it logically, the ancient Greeks used to talk about this idea that humankind went through this thing called metempsychosis, that the soul might incarnate as one creature, might incarnate as first off as an insect, then as a maybe an animal of some sort, a mouse, then perhaps as a cat, then perhaps as a horse, then perhaps as a higher level consciousness ape, and then perhaps as a human. They were thinking of it in terms of the soul jumping between species. So if the soul does that, then it would be quite likely that you could be easy to jump between you're not going to make a great leap from being a cat to becoming a human, because that's a huge leap evolutionarily, whatever you would say. But it could certainly be easy to do a cross jump to the same species. So who knows? I mean, the Buddhists believe that a human life is a very unusual and very precious thing, because the opportunities we get to incarnate in human form are extremely, extremely rare. And for a cat to jump to another cat, I think it's quite conceivable, isn't it? But we can't prove that. We don't know. The sort of things we've talked about today have kind of been proven to us through our work with mediumship over many years of qualified,
perhaps
verified
in that question,
evidence.
perhaps characters might be similar.
But it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly sure we like to think that, don't we?
Oh, Christina, do dogs have guardian angels? Yes, they have. Craig. He's not a dog lover.
I don't know why you guys drew
He's
these
not a dog
questions up,
lover,
Ron.
are you? I am.
Do dogs have guardian angels? Well, that's an interesting thought.
I'm sure all animals do. I'm sure they do.
I think, you see, I see it's kind of like what is consciousness, really. I think some animals don't retain their sense of identity. Now, would an ant retain its sense of identity after death? It obviously doesn't have as much consciousness as a human. I obviously have more consciousness than an ant. I have a sense. Well, some people might argue against that, but when I think about it, I've got more consciousness than an ant. So there must be a sort of quantity to consciousness, and it must take a certain quantity of consciousness for us to have self-consciousness. And I would argue that self-consciousness is not necessarily caused by the brain, but the brain is merely a conduit for that consciousness. But I think some animals, or most animals, might return, as it were, to the pool of consciousness because they haven't developed much of a sense of self. But I think gradually, at some point, a sense of self might occur. And that's when animals are able to incarnate and go on that metempsychosis that I was talking about.
I'd say dogs that are passed in spirit will definitely protect their owners on the earth plane, definitely. So dogs that have gone over and there's that love connection, there's still going to be that love connection from the other side, and they might get somebody, if something was going to happen on the earth, give warnings.
Yeah. I didn't really get to the answer on that, really, did I? Because I started talking about the idea of what actually happens to animals when they pass into the spirit. They kind of merge into a sea of consciousness, I think, some of them, and lose identity. But I think anything that's got an identity must therefore have begin to be part of, have a guiding spirit on the other side that would help them. So if a dog had self-consciousness, then yes, I think it probably would have some form of connection like that.
That's really Nana. Our deceased cat, Angel, alerted me just before my husband had a fit. She even closed my laptop to alert me and even jumped on the top as if... That's interesting in that, because that animal was having a sense that something was going to happen, and to alert Nana to help him, because he obviously was having a seizure, to help him.
Yeah, well, it seems to show higher intelligence in animals, doesn't it?
I think cats have.
And certainly, I would also say that would suggest empathy too, because if a cat had no empathy, therefore no love in its soul, it wouldn't care if the owner died or not, or they'd be caring about whether they're going to be fed or not, wouldn't they? So it would have had a form of empathy, and that empathy means that that animal cared. And you see it in the animal kingdom too, where the elephants try to pick up a dying elephant, try to get them back on their feet again. So we don't give animals enough credit, I don't think, for the level of compassion that they might have, and just how sentient they really are, because they truly are aware, I think. And like we said...
Well, the Egyptians worshipped cats, didn't they?
Yes, they did, didn't they? They saw them as... I think they saw them as the incarnate... Didn't they see human souls incarnated in cats' bodies or something? Well... I can't remember now. I remember reading something about that.
Yeah, they worshipped cats, and they'd like to... Yeah, they did worship cats, and they like to put some statues or something of cats in the coffins and things.
Yeah, weird stuff, isn't it?
Paul, what colour would a pet's aura be? Is it similar to human? Well, animals would have an energy going around their body, so I wouldn't say it would have colours. I'd say it would be like a bright light, like a living energy that it would retain on the outline of its body.
Well, all life has an energy field, an auric field. And that can change colour, and it changes colour often by the emotions. So the most likely example is a person's, when you say I see red, you are actually, and your aura is flashing with red.
We're talking about dogs.
And human energy field would change colour red. Similarly, so would an animal. If an animal was in an aggressive state, its auric colour would probably change, because I think the aura reflects the emotional state and the mental state of the owner of that
I mean, a dog
aura.
would see if someone suffers with depression, like darkness around that soul. But most dogs have bright lights because they've got a life force around them.
Yeah, so in answer to your question, Paul, I would say it's the same. For what I've seen when I look at animals, it looks very similar. Most of the time when you look at an aura, you don't see lots of colour. It's more like just an energy field.
That's what I say, bright light.
It's just an energy field most of the time.
Right, Louise Craig says, is it true that dogs pick up ghosts?
Well, we've already said, really, in many respects, that, when people come into the seance rooms, as it were, and come sit with us in our circles and or sit with us for a private reading, the animals very much seem to be connected with it. And when a spirit communication is happening, I used to have a circle, and for one period of time, we used to sit in the dark and have a circle, and one person actually brought their dog along to that circle, and the dog would put its head up. If something was interesting going on, would spot if something going on in the circle, and similarly, a lot of the dogs I've seen taken to spiritualist churches, for example, because if you go to spiritualist church, they don't mind a person bringing the dog, and quite often when you're doing a reading from the platform and you're moving around the platform, come to the lady over there, or the person at the back, or the person at the front, the dog would be looking, as not following my hand signal, but following almost where the spirit's going. So I'm sure they're spotting it. You know, they could be a bit distracting if they're at the front. You know, that dog's following every direction I go. You know, so yes, they do have. I think a quite strong sensitivity to spirits or ghosts. Ghosts being like energies as opposed to conscious spirits, just to make the definition between them. And even to puffins. My nan went for a psychic reading once, and they told her that the family dog was sat at her feet. The dog Jason had passed over.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? That's very reassuring.
Well, that's
lovely.
Nice.
That's
the
a
reader
great
had spotted
comfort.
the cat, or the
Great
dog,
comfort.
rather.
So
Yeah.
for an animal to come back again and to make contact, that's marvellous.
Sometimes, you know, the information that's given, you know, when you're given a message from the spirit world, you don't just say, I've got a dog with you. You'll often get the breed or the look of that dog, the size of the dog, the illnesses of the dog. You'll be told stories about what happened to the dog. So the messages that come through from the spirit world, when you're given a message, and sometimes in public messages too, can be quite remarkable, really, and it kind of proves to me that what we're getting as mediums is bang on, in that the spirit world, that animals really do survive, but also survive with all the characteristics that you're describing in that communication from spirit. So they obviously retain a sense of being that particular
Yes, I
creature.
can remember once a man said to me that he'd lost his dog, and I said, I've been told that you have the dog's collar in your coat pocket, and he pulled it out.
Yeah, at the reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and he was really pleased. I said, because every now and again you pick up that dog's collar, and it's as if you need to know that dog's still with you by smelling that collar. And he said, do you think that's crazy? I said, no, I don't. I think it's a lovely thing to do.
Wasn't that done on one of our TV shows?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, I'm thinking of another one.
No,
Yeah.
that was somebody that came to me in my private reading session.
Yeah.
But I can understand that, because I kept William's collar for a long time too.
Yeah. I remember on that TV show one. I put a clip up of that sometime, where I said that you know, when the dog died, you rolled him up in the carpet and carried him to the vets in the carpet, rolled up, because his body had gone.
That's what Thumbs Up Production talking about.
There's
Joanne says, my cat's pregnant at the moment. Think I'm coming out in sympathy pains for her. Oh dear. Well, I hope you don't have kittens, darling. But I think we do pick up, because I feel if we're very close to animals, we feel for them. But it's remarkable how animals give birth, cats, dogs, and how nature kicks in. Especially with cats and that, if they might have 4 or 5 kittens, and they're very knowing instantly what to do.
And of course, we all do resonate with each other, don't we? Particularly at times of pregnancies and births, because, you know, I mean, a mother will know when a baby's just been born, will know whether that baby's distressed or not, even if the baby's out of earshot or in another room, or even with the babysitter. They'll know if there's some distress. It's like we're connected, and this is, I think, one of the times that families, you know, mums and dads and babies, definitely realise that there is something more to this than just normal communication.
We've got a dove. We've got some doves in our garden, and the same dove has had 3 lots of doves, hasn't she? Such a good mother, isn't she? Yeah.
It's interesting to watch the in the garden, the birds being born all the time, one after another. It seems it's lovely.
There's one for you, Craig.
Do psychedelic drugs show us, allow us to connect with, communicate with animals?
God.
Well, I've taken magic mushrooms when in legal situations, and in the countries where you're allowed to do that sort of thing, and I think it does give you, psychedelic drugs can give you a real connection with nature, in ways that you start to see the fractal nature of the world, and a very, very much a connection with all of nature. It comes alive. Forests will come alive. The grass will come alive. The sky will come alive. And you will realise your smallness, that you are part of this. Because in the world that we live in, the world is full of, it's a concrete world that's all closed off from nature. But once you realise your connectivity with nature, very much the connection with animals is enormous. And people like Carlos Castaneda, who actually I think was a bit of a con with what he wrote and everything, but he was picking up on some of the things that people were feeling about the idea that you do connect with the animal kingdom very much, and with the animal spirits perhaps as well, and some of the ideas that are coming out now more so than ever from the Amazon jungles about being able to travel in animals, you know, as well, and things like this. No, I mean, we have an arrogance of thinking that our world that we've created around us is completely our own, is somehow insulated from nature, and that we're not part of nature. And we forget that we are animals. You know, this is an animal body. You know, this is nothing special. We think human is something different, but we are all interconnected, and the spirits of the animal world, the spirits of nature, the spirit of the forest, the spirit of the ocean, the spirit of the mountains, the spirit of the valleys, all those things we've forgotten. And it's a great, great sadness, because, you know, this is where when we get to the point we realise that, you know, it's all connected. It's all connected telepathically. It's all connected as a morphic field, as I was talking about. It's all spirit and aurically connected. And we're fools when we ignore all that, because it's one of the most marvellous experiences one can have in one's life, and knowing oneself as being part of nature and not above it.
Right. Question. I dreamt that my cat was with me climbing a steep hill to reach Sai Baba.
Sati Sai Baba.
Yeah. What does this mean? My cat was really climbing to reach Sai Baba. Well, obviously you're a very spiritual person, Alexander, and we all know about Sai Baba. Well, some do, some don't. But cats are very symbolic, I think, and it's that you have a very strong link with that cat. And people that actually dream as Sai Baba is actually, he does do a visit to you, doesn't he?
Yes, as
because
you
he had
probably,
an elephant, didn't he?
Yeah,
his favourite.
And Sai Baba, I mean, people will, you know, so those that understand about Sai Baba, and I've had a direct experience of Sai Baba, or had a dream about Sai Baba, will realise that those experiences that you have in a dream with Sai Baba are real. Sai Baba says that you cannot dream about him without him willing it. So the dream, I think, perhaps is, you know, how do we interpret it? It's perhaps at that point in your life you were climbing a heavy mountain of some sort. You had some difficulty in your life, because climbing a mountain is an arduous task, isn't it? So you were probably feeling that, and maybe the cat was just part of your soul. I don't know. I can't interpret it, because dreams about Sai Baba are so special to you. Only you would really know what the answers to that dream is. They're not like ordinary dreams where we can say this means this and this means that. You've got to look at it, because it's something very, very specific to you, Alexandra. But it shows an interesting thing that your cat is somehow connected, and maybe there's a message in there, but I can't interpret that dream. I don't think I can with Sai Baba dreams. It's so personal that it goes beyond normal symbolism of dreams.
Belinda, I heard my cat purring when he was being put down at the vet's. Oh
God!
I was at home in tears, and the purring was so loud I immediately stopped crying to hear it. Oh, well, that cat obviously is like giving you a cat blessing. I see it really, saying that everything's okay. You done what you did out of kindness and out of love, and so hearing the purring to say, "I've arrived. I'm safe, and thank you."
Yeah, it's the last act of love, isn't it? Actually, in a way, you know, it's a shame we can't do it with humans, really. I mean, you know, I've spoken to people before who've had readings with me who've, you know, actually said that they've helped their loved one to pass over by upping the drugs and things many times. But you know, we're not allowed to do this in real life, are we? We have to leave the person to suffer. So I think it is so much kinder, really, to allow a person to pass over, and the same with the animal too. Because
hard,
what you
very
do
hard.
when you do, it's an act of love, isn't it? It was a great consideration when you take the cat to the vets or the dog to the vets, knowing that it's their last journey, or thinking, knowing that the vet's going to probably advise you that it's their last journey, and it has to be, an act of love, really, because why should a thing suffer unnecessarily for those last hours, when that could be taken away? I don't know. This is a huge question. These things, have we stopped the karma, or have we
No, we do
stopped the
actually.
suffering?
We
I
do
think,
things out of love and compassion.
I think it's our duty to stop suffering
love
wherever
and
we see it.
compassion
Yeah.
and kindness.
Getting close to the end
Viviane,
now.
good evening, Jane and Craig. I've seen my pets around the house long after they've passed to the other side. That's lovely. That really lovely. So you must have given an awful lot of love, and they wanted to connect back with you, because I feel we do all sense pets that we've loved deeply, and they do try and get that journey back to us. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Well, I think there were some really lovely questions there tonight, and some really nice comments, and I hope you've enjoyed all that, and as parts of our. And if you've been enjoying the show, don't forget, please become a patron. This question tonight, this theme tonight, Pat from the patrons was asking if we could do something on pets, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. So any of you that are patrons, I do try to take up your suggestions whenever we can, particularly for these shows, because we're often looking for ideas too, and it's quite nice when you contribute. So this whole theme tonight was thanks to the patrons, and there's a few of them running across the bottom of the page. We'll put a few up each time so that you can see your names, those of you that have become a patron for the site. And so have a look. If you want to become a patron, have a look in the description below on the YouTube, because there's a little link there, and you can go to the patron page and you can give a little bit, and it helps us to keep all this going, keeps the channel going, keeps the equipment, helps us to get the laptops here and the computer in the other room there, and the lighting and the rental, which is very expensive for this place, and it helps us, allows us to be able to do a weekly show like this. So thank you, patrons. And if you can't even afford to be a patron, at least give us a good thumbs up and maybe share it and subscribe, because that all helps as well for the channel.
And can I say, do go on my channel, Jane Hamilton Parker, because I just get inspiration at times, and I talk on my channel, and also I'm on Instagram as well, Craig.
And all the links for this are in the description below, including our Facebook pages and things like that. So you can see, you want to get more of Craig and Jane, you've got it all there.
Can you never
get enough to want more?
Can you never get enough of Craig and Jane?
So it's all there. Anyway, we're going to say goodbye, and we'll leave you with this a new little ending that we have for the show for tonight. Okay, see you soon. Bye for now, folks. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm now going to conclude the show by just doing catching up with a little bit of ironing for Jane. So do please join us again and follow this channel, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now. See you soon. Better?